It's so very easy. My name is Laura, and I love collecting fat quarters, but every once in a while, I do need to use up some of those fat quarters. So let's make a quilt with 5 fat quarters and 1.5 yards of just an additional solid fabric. The fabric I'm using today is from Figo, and it's called Mountain Meadows. It has these really cute butterflies and some summery colors to go with them. And with it, I've chosen a nice soft white. We were going to need 5 fat quarters, and the solid color, we need 1.5 yards. And if you can find a fabric that's the same from both sides, it's going to save some time. The quilt is going to consist of 16 of these blocks, some sashing and some sashing squares, and a nice big border. This soft beige makes these points along the outside, and the points are a rectangle with a little piece taken out. Now you can always make this with a square and a half square triangle, but having it cut this way is going to save some fabric. The center squares are made from 2.5-inch squares, and we will need a total of 32. I will also need 32 butterflies cut at 2.5 inches. The 2 outside squares, 2.5 inches, we also need 32. And the opposite 2 sides, 2.5 inches, 32. So you can switch up any of those 2.5-inch squares to suit your fabric. You'll be able to cut these 2.5-inch squares right from the fat quarters. We'll talk about the sashing and those sashing stones after, when this block is put together. The next 2 pieces that need to be cut are these 2 pieces that are going to go together. What we're looking for is 32 cut going in one direction and 32 cut going in the opposite direction. And they're very easy to cut. If the fabric is reversible, you won't need to worry about it. You're just going to be able to cut the pieces just as you need. And they do go together as you're cutting them. We'll also need 64 of these little triangles, 32 for each pile. By cutting them out to match, we're going to save fabric. If you're going to make half square triangles, you will need an additional fat quarter. In the description, I'll put a handout which will give you a template for these pieces and the template for the triangles. And let's go over how easy it is to cut these. My preferred method is to take this shape and cut it out of a piece of template plastic. I'm going to need 32 in this direction and 32 in the reverse. With this template shape, I'm going to be able to draw the fabric lines first and cut it second. I'm going to be able to start with a long piece of fabric at 2.5 inches. And that template will fit right on that 2.5-inch strip. From here, I like to draw the cutting lines. And I do go all the way around the template, even this little point that is cut out. If you don't want to cut it out, that's fine. You're only going to end up a sharp point at the corner. The next, you're going to be able to take this and just rotate it, and those pieces are going to match up. I'll only need to draw one more line and this little cutout point if you choose. I'll be able to trace the shape all the way along that long strip of fabric. And as long as we are twisting it in this direction, it's going to be the same shape. If your fabric is reversible, it's going to give you the reverse image. If you have fabric that is not reversible, you will need to do 32 in one direction and 32 in the reverse. Start and do 2 in the one direction, then turn that template over. You're going to still be able to match up the edge, but the point is going in the opposite direction. Once I have all of the shapes drawn on my strip, I'm going to be able to cut them. But I'm going to make stacks of 4. The reason I like to stack 4 is I need 4 of these pieces per block. And it's just easier for me to count as I'm going along. From here, I'm going to be able to cut up my shapes following the line. For that line on the diagonal, I do the first straight line, and that separates my 2 pieces, and then I'll do the next straight line. So I will have a whole row of these shapes. From there, I can cut off those little corners. Now, cutting those corners off are optional, but it does help match up the little triangles. You can cut off those corners just using your drawn lines, or you can use a template. It is from Marty Michelle, and it is designed to cut off the corners. And it's called the Perfect Patchwork Corner Trimmer. So I would just take this and slide up that end so it matches right into that triangle and cut off those little pieces. By cutting off those corners, when your triangles match up, you're going to have them match. We now have the shape ready, and we haven't wasted any fabric at all. If you decide to do the half square triangle, you're going to need a 2.5-inch square and then a 2.5-inch half square triangle. Now we can cut the triangles that go on the end. We need 32 squares cut out at 2 inches and 7/8 of an inch. And that's the exact measurement we're going to need in order to maintain that perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. Cut that square right in half. We can also trim the corners with that little corner trimmer, and we can trim both sides, or we can just leave it the way it is. Just sew those two pieces together. If you've not trimmed off the corners, that's fine. You'll be able to just match up that fabric. One edge is going to match up. The other edge, you're going to have a dog ear. You're going to start stitching right in that corner and come down a 1/4 inch. So the stitching line starts right here in this corner and it comes right off that fabric. When it's pressed, it's going to match up. If you decide you're going to cut off that corner, those pieces are going to match up and you have no dog ears pointing out. You'll be able to stitch a 1/4 inch right down that center line. And when you press it, you have no dog ears sticking out. So there are 3 ways we can do this. One with a straight cut, one with the corners cut off, or we make a half square triangle and put the two together. For the 16 blocks, we're going to need 32 points going in one direction and 32 points going in the second. With these long strips done, we can work on sewing that 4 patch together in the center. So I can sew all my stacks together, twist them, and sew the 4 patches. With our 4 patch done, we're going to be able to sew that last row in. Those little triangles are going to go towards these blue squares. One pile is going to go on one side, so we're going to be able to divide that pile in half. The second pile, we will be able to divide in half. If you lay it out this way and you don't like the look, you can always change your squares. This is one advantage of having all of the pieces pre-cut first. We're going to be able to sew these together in rows. To bring it to the machine, because these 2 pieces are the same, we're going to be able to restack them. Now we can take this right to the machine and sew the one on one side and the other on this side. And we can also take and put those together. We now have a total of 16 blocks. We can just put these blocks together the way that they are. We can put them together so we have a 4 patch in the center, or we can twist them so that the 4 pieces in the center are the same. We now have 2 secondary shapes. The one has a bit of a star shape, and the other one looks like a square with a square, but we can't put these together with sashing. We're going to keep all of the same color coming in towards the center. The sashing is going to be 2.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and we will need 24 of these pieces. We'll be able to put the block together as one big square with the sashing in the center. And in this case, we're going to have all of the same center blocks coming together. So we'll be able to have the 4 pieces of sashing to join the blocks, and in the center, the same blue. This gives us the appearance of a 9 patch. We will be able to make 4 sets identical to this. So 2 of the sashings onto the center square and 2 of the sashings onto the sides. From there, we're going to be able to sew those rows together. And this will make one big block. And we can do this 4 times. So we now will have 4 big blocks. Once those 4 blocks are done, we're going to be able to join them together. And we're going to join them with sashing. It's going to fill in this space here. That's going to be a duplicate of this. So we're going to need 2 pieces of sashing, 2.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and one of the golds in the center. And we're going to need this piece of sashing here and then along these sides. So start and make 4 of these units. Take 2 of the big blocks and sew them onto these units. So we will now have 2 long rows, and our patches are going to match up in the corner, just like the center of the block. These 2 big rows are going to be put together with those 2 leftover pieces of sashing, and we're going to join those sashings together with another blue, and that way it's matching the center one. So start by stitching this row of sashing together and then match up the seams and sew the quilt top together. I'm going to cut my border at 3 inches. So for 2 sides, I'm going to need 3 inches by 38.5. When those 2 sides are on, my top and bottom will be cut at 3 inches at 43.5 inches. And I'm going to put those on all the way around. With that border cut at 3 inches, the quilt is now at 43.5 inches. Having these blocks twisted to match the center stones in the sashing gives it a secondary design. We have the gold together and the blues together. When we stand back from it, we will really notice that design. If you cut your binding at about 2 inches, you're going to have enough left over from the fat quarters to give yourself a binding all the way around. If you want wider than a 2 inch, you're going to need 1 more fat quarter to add. And I've cut up all the pieces, so it's going to be scrappy. Having my binding done first means that my quilt will have a binding when I do get it quilted. So all we needed was 5 fat quarters and 1.5 yards of an additional fabric. And we're going to be able to make this in any fat quarter fabric. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.